All right, cool. So you guys, as you know, or may not know, my name is Jim Brown. I'm a Florida real estate attorney and owner of New Path Title, founder at New Path Title, and the technology that we built for realtors called Title Leap. I have the pleasure of Brian Poole's invitation to give seminars to you guys live via RealTrade. And at this stage of my career, this is the single thing I like to do the most with my time is find out what's on agents' minds, find tools for agents to solve those issues, and then elevate the profession. So anytime anybody contacts me, it's welcome. It's not an interruption. People always start with, "I'm so sorry to take up your time." Text me 24/7. Every time you call me, there's 100,000 agents out there that are having the same pain, and iron sharpens iron. And I'm all about elevating everybody's game. That's what it's all about, right? Everybody wants to get to the closing table smoother, and I can help that happen for sure. I'm going to give an overview of the topic. And then I'm gonna keep this quick and as painless as possible. And then I'm gonna give a brief statement about what Title Leap is and how we can get to the transaction table, get through the transaction smoother once we get it under contract. And then I'm gonna open up the floor to question and answer from you guys, and that'll generate more content for the future. So, Ryan, did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, I'm excited to be here, Jim. I like you were saying, a little bit here quick about myself. I've been in real estate as an active agent for over 20 years. Definitely know the highs and lows of real estate and the cycles that we've been gone through some myself. And as you just mentioned here, 2023, I feel is going to be, a bit of a challenge, and you have to work harder. You have to, bring a lot of things to the table, especially nailing your listing appointments. I mean, this is a big one, as the consumers become smarter, they're out there looking for the best agents, and you want to have a lot of tools in your toolbox to be able to nail them and differentiate yourself from other agents and bring something special to the table. So that's why I'm so excited to connect with you, Jim, leverage all your expertise, and then obviously share it with the RealTrade network. For people that don't know, RealTrade is right now the fastest growing online marketplace and social platform for real estate. We have almost 1,000 agents, thousands of buyers and sellers, and now service providers like Jim that are adding value. So it's great to be on here, and looking forward to this. And obviously we're just starting, but we want to make this a series. So and just bring a lot of value to the agents. I mean, like Jim was saying, we can all learn from each other, and iron sharpens iron. I love that one.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I talk to agents and they say, don't tell anybody this stuff because we want the unfair advantage. Here's the reality, right? We all walk in smarter, the deals close quicker, and we spend a lot less time and burn a lot less calories. We're trying to get our screen share piece going. Let's see, open. There we go. All right, so without further ado, I want to bring your attention to a tool that we invented. Well, actually, let me give a brief intro. So you cold called your heart out, you cold called your heart out, you've networked till you dropped, and you click funneled or Zillowed the bank dry, and now you have a listing appointment. You've got your market analysis. You've got your marketing plan, and the seller's motivation, but you're still missing something. The real estate industry is overlooked since its inception in 1890. In the near future, this will be the standard in all real estate listings. You guys, I don't like to tell you I guarantee things, because nobody can guarantee anything, right? But I can tell you with 110% secure certainty that what we're going to talk about today, is the future of real estate transactions. So it takes two things to close a house sale. You need an agreement for value and clear title. You are fully prepared on value, but taking a shot in the dark on title. In the near future, no one will walk into a listing appointment without knowing title as well as they know value. Listing appointment competition is fierce, and value drops. And as value drops, deals are getting skinny. To nail that listing, you have to be on your A++ game. Everyone is bringing their A game. Title advance gives you an A++ game and makes sure you will close. How do you stand out when the seller is laying in bed that night and running the tape in their mind of the 5 listing agents they talked to that day? How do you quickly drop your value proposition? How do you distinguish yourself? It's easy. Sellers sign up with the most prepared agent. It's just reality. Whoever walks in the door and is the most prepared is going to stand out in their mind when they run that Rolodex tape at night. Title advance gives you the extra edge and makes you the most prepared agent. To get your title advance, just text me the address and the word title advance at 307-0885. And at NewPath, we love preparing agents, right? This is not a burden for us. This is a joy. This is greasing the rails to closing early on. We'll deliver a Google link with the title advance. You can text me 24/7 on that number if you need any explanation or you need any transactional support. And when the seller says, you know, my Zillow price is so much higher, don't forget to tell them Zillow failed getting their pricing structure down for themselves. What makes you think Zillow can price your house? This checklist is long, right? So this is my listing checklist. This is the stuff you want to do before you walk into the listing appointment to nail that listing appointment. It's long, but remember, knowledge is power. Read it once, look at it before you walk into a listing appointment. The more you know early, the smoother the road to closing is. Before we jump into that, I want to just quickly go over what a title advance looks like. So you've ordered your title advance. I delivered you your Google link. You've looked at it before you walk into your listing appointment. Ryan, can you see the title advance summary report?
No, I can't see it on the, I was just going to just chime in here. I can't see, you're sharing a screen, but it's of just like looks like a lake, you know, with some hills.
Oh, screen one, title advance. All right, so here.
There it is. There we go.
Here's the listing. Here's the listing appointment checklist. It's available on our website. If you go to newpathtitle.com, I'll go over in the middle. This is the stuff we just went over. Here's how you get your title advance. And here is a sample title advance report. So you text me the address of the property you're going to go to, and I'm going to deliver you back a title advance report. It's going to look like this. There's the date you ordered it. There's the address, there's the owner, there's who prepared it, and then there's going to be a list of the encumbrances to title. We're going to spell it out and it's not going to look like a title insurance commitment or a title insurance policy. It's going to be easy to read language. You're going to be able to, you won't get the current loan balances because that's impossible to determine because people don't make their payments sometimes, but you will get the value of the mortgage and the age of the mortgage. And then you're going to get all kinds of other little things that might hold up your closing. So the lien in favor of Credit Suisse and the original principal amount of $13,000. Now you know when you have that listing appointment, after you get them to sign, you want to talk about the things that are going to be hurdles to closing. Without a title advance report, you're relying on the seller to tell you, oh, there's a first mortgage. And they don't tell you there's a second mortgage because they didn't realize the Y-Green loan or the PACE loan or the HELOC or the whatever was a second mortgage. Now you're going to have a report and you're going to, as well as your market analysis and the comps and all the things you go over, you're also going to drop the title advance and you're going to say, oh, Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller, I see you also have, or you have your encumbrance. There's a first mortgage, a second mortgage, and a third mortgage. The big thing to you, or a third encumbrance or a judgment or something like that. The big thing to agents is, as deals get skinnier, you're going to have to do a business analysis on these things closing or not. And we're already starting to see it. Since 2014, I haven't received any bad debt phone calls. In the last 4 weeks, I've probably received 1 or 2 a week. Bad debt phone calls are sellers calling me saying, hey, what are their options? They're having a hard time paying their bills, or they got relocated and the equity in the deal is now skinny. Or quite frankly, buyers can't get the loans they used to get And so now they need to have a lower price, and now there's less equity in the deal. So you can do the business valuation. You're not taking a shot in the dark on what title is going to reveal to you. And if you're walking into a listing appointment and you're burning all these calories, and you have a deal like we had last week, where just before closing, the deal came to us late, we got the title, and a week before closing, we saw that the seller had a $53,000 lien. The lien was for a code violation, and the reality was the house was painted pink, and they hung numbers on the house in pink, and they had been violated many, many years ago for not having contrasting colors, and there was a $50 a day fine running that was now $53,000. That seller never revealed that to the listing agent. And we got the title at the last minute, and we worked it up for closing, and a few days before closing, there it is. Unbelievable, $53,000. Now the deal's upside down. Well, who's coming out of their pocket to make that thing close? It's not the seller, and it's not the buyer. They all look at the agent. And you don't want to be in that position. And I can give you 100 examples of municipal liens where the city has a special taxing district for water improvements in Delray, for example, or Wellington. It only applies to a couple of streets. And so they get to the closing table, and the buyer's agent thought they were going to be really clever, and they clicked that provision in the contract where it says the seller will pay all the accumulated assessments prior to closing, and they total the thing up, and the seller doesn't read the contract, and now they realize they owe an extra 27 grand at closing, and everybody's freaking out. Guess who they turn to? The agents. So we want to be ahead of the ball on that stuff. We want to be ahead of the curve, and that's what 2023 is all about. It's all about getting ahead of the ball, showing them that you're different. And how do you come up with unique propositions, value propositions for your sellers when this market is so tight and sellers are interviewing so many listing agents? Ryan, chime in if you have any ideas, but I know everybody's coming to the table with value. I know everybody's coming to the table with the most competitive marketing plan. You need that extra edge. You need to know that at the end of that long closing pipeline, this thing is going to close. And if there are legal issues, let's wipe that thing out right now. We're a full service title company. If you have two people who aren't getting along and one person is having an issue with value, we can dig into our toolbox like partition, right? We can get this thing to the closing table. We can do the ejectment for that person who won't leave. We can do, evictions, or we even do negotiations where we have holdover sellers or whatever the issue might be. I'm sorry, Brian, I cut you off. I got excited.
Yeah, no, Jim, that's great. I mean, the thing is, I've actually had title issues myself that have popped up before closing that actually costed me thousands of dollars. Like you said, at the end, they're going to look at the agents to cut their commissions to cover it. And it was one of those deals where there was a lien on the property using another title company. Jim, this wasn't you. This was last year. And, lien came up on title at the very end. And, there was actually some credits given before that thing, before it popped up, that could have been addressed at that time. And it ended up costing me about $3,000 out of my commission to help cover it, because the deal was that skinny, where the seller couldn't bring any money to the table to close this thing. It was a situation where the property was, very skinny, and it ended up costing me money out of my pocket. So I can't say this enough. Not only can this save you money, but help you be prepared for nailing your listing appointments, and, have these conversations with the seller, and they see that you're going the extra mile, right? That you're doing your due diligence, that you're being prepared. All those things add up to help you nail a listing. That's certain.
And circling back to my statement at the beginning of the conversation, this is going to be the standard in real estate transactions in less than a year or two or three. The underwriters are slow to move. We want to be ahead of the curve for our agents. We walk it like we talk it here, right? We make software in-house that gives the agents the best closing experience they can get. I can tell you straight up, things like Title Advance are going to be the industry standard soon enough. I want to be ahead of the curve so I can have my agents get the benefit of the easiest transaction they can have. But I can tell you right now, at some point in the near future, everybody's going to be scrubbing title before they go to their listing appointment. Because in the digital age, everybody should, right? And no one should be burning the calories all the way through the closing only to find out the seller lacks capacity. All right. So I'm going to deliver you a Google link. It's going to have the title advance. You can do with it what you want. We talked about the Zillow statement. This closing checklist is long. Don't be intimidated. Just remember, knowledge is power, right? Without the knowledge, you're operating in the dark. When think back to when you were a new agent, now you know everything about the transaction. Title Leap tells you about every step we're taking. Knowledge is power. It's a little overwhelming at first, but when you read this thing a couple times through and you think about it, it's not that much. You look at the property appraiser. So before you walk into the property, before you go on your listing appointment, you look at the property appraiser's website. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there. There's land use, right? So the buyer, the seller's telling you that you rented out the property, and you can look at the property appraiser's website and you can see it's a single family. You can have that conversation early. We had a transaction the other day. Seller was selling a multifamily, selling agent listed it as a multifamily. The lender pulls out at the last minute because it's not a licensed multifamily property. That should have been dealt with at the list before the listing appointment. They went through the whole thing. So the property appraiser's website is your friend. Look at if you're dealing with something that they've represented as a multifamily, look at the land use. If you have any questions, text me 24/7. We'll get on top of it. Review the deed. Who's named in title? Most important thing. You cannot believe how often this is overlooked. And I want to stress something, right? So we're in the era of tight deals and fewer transactions. So you want to make sure every time you're involved in a deal, you're getting to the closing table. What does that look like? That looks like you're doing your job and you're doing the other agent's job, because you don't know if that other agent is on the ball or not. So we had a deal the other day. Husband and wife don't get along. Wife went out, found a listing agent she was buddy with, and got the property listed up. They got a full price offer and dropped it on the husband to sign the contract. Didn't sign the listing agreement. The agent was told by the wife, oh yeah, it's my husband, everything will be fine, several $1 million sale. And sure enough, the husband doesn't sign. Why? Because he just wants to spite the wife, whatever the motivation was, but they should have got the husband's signature to the listing agreement. Now, the listing agent hires an attorney and writes a demand letter on the husband that he's going to sue him if he doesn't sign the listing agreement. Where they ever found this attorney, I have no idea. Why they're burning all these calories is beyond me. It doesn't apply so much in husband and wife transactions, but when you start talking about entities and trusts and things like that, which we'll go over in a minute, it's all super important. Just remember in the back of your mind, ultimately you will need everybody's signature and title. You'll need them to sign the closing documents. And we'll go over the rules on that in a minute. There's a little link I made here to I had an agent call me the other day and ask me who has to sign the listing agreement and the contract. Believe it or not, the parties necessary to sign the closing documents can be different than the parties necessary to sign the listing agreement and the contract, but just know that if you get everybody that has to sign the closing documents up front, then you won't have any last minute hiccups for closing. Questions: married, single, corporate entity, or trust. If they're married, then the not present spouse is going to have to sign if it's their homestead. And if the divorce is not final yet. You can't believe how often this issue comes up. So we get somebody who lists their property, goes through the contract, signs the contract, and they represent themselves as single. And then at the closing table, the remote notary or whoever's sitting with the seller says, and you're not married, right? And they say, well, we're actually in the middle of the divorce. Nail these issues right up front. If you nail them right up front, you're not going to have problems on the road to closing. If it's a corporate entity, you can see this, Ryan? Everything's coming through on your end?
Yeah, I can see it perfect.
If it's a corporate entity and it's an LLC, you will need all the managers or authorized members. Here's where it gets sticky. People will say to you, but I own the company. And you're going to say to them, but you're not listed as a manager, and we need all the managers, not owners. So sometimes owners are managers and sometimes owners are not managers. We always need the managers. So if Ryan owns a company, he can assign me to be the manager. Although he's the owner, guess who gets to sign everything for buying and selling? The manager. Most of the time, your managers will be members, and them telling you they're the owner is sufficient. But you have to take 2 minutes and you have to go to the Sunbiz record and you have to sort that out. It's real easy to do. Just text me if you can't figure it out. And the one curveball is when you're dealing with LLCs, there are AMBRs, which are authorized members. Those are people that are telling you they're owners, but they're also authorized to manage the company. I'm always going to bring up stuff, you guys don't get overwhelmed, but I'm always going to bring up stuff that adds strength to your toolkit. And I'm going to tell you something that if you're ever talking to sellers and they want to know to set up their entity to sell, you want to tell your sellers when you file your entity, always list who the managers are, never list who the owners are. So the state doesn't require you tell the state who the owner is. The state always requires you tell the state who the manager is. So keep the owner under your hat. There's a number of reasons why that's important. Give the state the bare minimum amount of information they need to keep your entity legal, and that's just giving them the manager. Many times it will be the owner, but you don't have to disclose who the members or owners are. Sometimes you'll see LLCs with presidents, vice presidents, secretaries, and treasurers. Technically, only one of these has to sign, but you're going to want to get all three of them because I've seen problems with underwriters and partners when you start trying to put presidents, vice presidents, secretaries, and treasurers in LLCs. So the general rule is, if it's got a manager, get the signature of both managers. If it's got a president, vice president, secretary, or treasurer, get all their signatures as well. But here's where you get a curveball. If it's a corporation or a incorporation or a corp, all you need is one signature, vice president, president, secretary, or treasurer, and I recommend you get the vice president or the president. If you think there's a problem and you think there's infighting in the executives, you can get the signatures of everybody. You would not be wrong doing that. But the law is when you have a corp, the law of entities is when you have a corp, an inc, or a corporation, you only need the signature of one executive. And I recommend you get the vice president or the president. Again, like LLCs, presidents, vice presidents, secretary, and treasurers are the managers. They may be the owners, which are shareholders, and they may not. Something to remember, directors cannot bind a company, a corporation. Shareholders cannot bind a corporation. And members cannot bind a corporation. No matter how much they kick and scream, they can tell you they're the owner. If they're not the president, they can't bind the corporation. And you're going to have a problem just before closing. Generally speaking, owners and shares members cannot bind companies, although they may insist they can. Trusts. So you walk into your listing appointment and ahead of time, you've looked at title, you've looked at the deed, and you see that the property is held in a trust. I'm going to say early on, some deeds call out who the trustee is and some deeds don't. Don't get freaked out. General rule, get the signature of whoever you're sitting with at the table. Text me and we'll figure it out afterwards. But don't walk out of that appointment without a signature on the listing agreement, and we can figure out if you don't have everybody you need. You want to set expectation early when you're dealing with trusts. So if we have one problem all the time with trusts, that problem would be sellers don't want to tell you, don't want to give up a copy of the trust just before closing. Why is that a problem? Because we are, as title agents, going to need either the declarations page in the trust, which identifies who has control of the trust and who the beneficiaries are, or we're going to need a copy of the trust. So you want to set those expectations early. You got your listing agreement signed, And then you're gonna have the conversation. Hey, Mrs. Seller, hey, Mr. Seller, before closing, as I'm sure you're aware, the title agent's gonna need a copy of the trust. I wanna make sure you have it on hand. I wanna make sure that you're comfortable with conveying it to the title company. If they're not, you're not gonna make an issue out of it right there. You're gonna leave the listing agreement. We're gonna have a conversation about what to do next, and we're gonna figure out how to get it. Maybe you guys have never run into this, but in the last 2 months, I've probably seen 3 deals have heartburn and 1 deal not close because the seller didn't want to come with a copy of the trust. Now, that means one of 2 things. Every single time it means one of 2 things. Either they're corrupting the powers in the trust, or they're generally sloppy and they can't find the documents. If they insist they can't come up with it, typically they're trying to corrupt the powers in the trust and misauthorize the transaction. So, but we do get people who are just generally not able to put their hands on the document, but we can always get something, right? So typically drafted by a lawyer, even in another state, we can go back and we can find that lawyer and get a copy. I don't want to harp on this too much, but I do want to say that this is incredibly important in paving the road to closing, getting a copy of that trust up front. Huge hiccup. Look at the deed to see if the trustee is named. Sometimes the trustee is named right on the face of the deed. Land trusts and more exotic trusts almost never identify the entity, the party who is the trustee. That's done intentionally. So if you have, like I for years sold our properties under the Brown Family Florida Land Trust, intentionally omitting the identity of the trustee. Now you have to do what we said right from the start. Just get the signature of the person who's in front of you. Don't make a big deal about the trust agreement. Let them know they're going to have to produce a copy, but then we can have the conversation. Text me and we'll have the conversation about what the next step looks like. If you can get a copy of that listing, that trust at the listing appointment, if it's possible, that will save you so many calories down the road that I see people going back and forth on. If it's not, and you might even set that expectation when you have the conversation, setting the listing appointment. Again, you don't want to create too much friction. You want to get that listing agreement signed as soon as possible. Partnerships, limited partnerships, and more exotic partnerships or other entities. Get the signature of whoever's in front of you. It's kind of like a trust. The reason why limited liability companies and corporations are different is because under Florida law, you have to identify who the managers are, who the executives are at corps and LLCs. In partnerships and limited partnerships, you may, but you don't have to record in Sunbiz who the partners are. You might find them in Sunbiz and you may not. That's not a problem. If Ryan and Jim own property, we're a partnership under the statute. We haven't recorded anything, but if it's easy to identify us, Jim owns 50 and Ryan owns the other 50. But if the selling entity is the Ryan and Jim company, right, or it's the R and J company, who gets to sign the listing agreement? We don't know, but you get the signature of whoever's in front of you and we'll figure it out. You can't go to Sunbiz to get that stuff. And limited partnerships and general partnerships can get really tricky. Bottom line, like I've said a couple times before, get the signature of whoever you have. I can think of 1,000 examples of agents that could have avoided last minute hiccups that didn't. And this is the stuff that paves the way to closing. It's all done in your homework stage. It's all done early on. If you have time, again, I'm not trying to overwhelm you. I'm going to give you the closing checklist. It's under the Realtor Resources button on New Path Title. Check for open permits, right?
Yeah.
I
want to chime in. Yeah, I want to chime in on this one, Jim, because this literally just happened on a deal that I just had. I was actually the buyer's agent. And it was kind of a limited service listing agreement with this other agent that wasn't even involved. So I'm actually as the buyer's agent, was dealing directly with the seller. And, come to find out there's a bunch of open permits here. Once I find out, we're under contract, and I'm like, well, we need to get these things closed here. Obviously before closing, it was a big deal actually for the buyers to get them closed because they wanted to actually move in right away. You actually did the the closing. I actually got the seller to pick you guys to do the closing, which was great. And yeah, I mean, that's something too, even as a buyer's agent, to help you guys is, check for these open permits. I've had deals that have gone sideways because of this, and there might be something that needs to be, taken care of, obviously, before closing. That couldn't be a big deal. That could be, if you're the listing agent, could be taken care of way earlier.
I'm gonna make a little deviation, kind of like when we were talking about the LLCs, and give you a little value add here.
Yeah.
The permitting schedules, the permitting reports are available in most municipalities. City of West Palm Beach makes them easily accessible. Jupiter, they're easy to get at online, right? So gone is the day when realtors don't have to look at this stuff. And not only do you have to look at it when you're the seller's agent for your listing appointment, because you're going to have these conversations later if you don't have them now or early in the deal. Gone are those days, because what happens is you hire a the buyer signs up, the buyer hires and you guys have seen this, I'm sure, I'm preaching to the choir. Buyer hires an inspector. The inspector walks through the property. On their right hand, they have an iPad on a strap. As they walk through the property, they see the brand new water heater. They scroll through their iPad because they already have the thing pulled up to the permitting schedule for the municipality, and they see there's no permit for a water heater. Instantly, no conversation had. And the buyer's inspector writes their report, and they say unpermitted equipment. Now you've just opened up this whole world of dialogue that should never have happened as you walked into your listing appointment knowledgeable. And here's the bottom line that everybody in real estate screws up. Open permits are not a title issue. Open permits are a contract issue. The standard FAR puts permit closures on the buyer. This is a huge problem 9 times out of 10. People call us all the time. We get ahead of the curve. We send this stuff into Title Lead. You guys get notice. We even send a notice that says open permits aren't on a title issue. They're a contract issue. Please look at the municipal lien search in your contract if you have any questions. And so an open permit never turns into a title issue and becomes a seller's problem until it goes to a special magistrate hearing and a lien is imposed. All right. So imagine, and we'll go into this in more depth in the future in another title talk. Imagine you have this crazy archive of records at the municipality. It's a black box. Nobody really knows what's in there until you send a special report to the municipality asking for a municipal lien search. The public record, on the other hand, is publicly available 24/7 for free digitally. I'm not talking about the property appraiser's record, but the public record. When you do a title search, title searches scrub the public record, liens, mortgages, encumbrances, but they don't. A title search does not scrub the municipal lien records, the municipal records. So if you're the city of West Palm, you've got this archive of all the code violations that never turned into liens. Again, all those things before they're liens are all contract issues. They're not title issues. And I get 2 or 3 calls a week from somebody that closed a deal somewhere in Florida, and they say we have open permits, and they're a buyer. And they call me and they say we have open permits, we had no idea. And the first thing I say is send me a copy of your contract. And the second conversation is, oh, by the way, you had an inspection period and the contract put the burden of closing these on you and you had an inspector. Not much we're going to do now. Now, there are some exceptions in the contract when sellers have to disclose that stuff. And we'll go over that in another title talk. But bringing it back to the checklist, take 2 minutes, whether you're the buyer's agent or the seller's agent, it doesn't matter. And look at the permit records for that property. You're the buyer's agent, like Ryan said, you're doing this FSBO seller, they have no clue. Now you definitely have to do both sides of the deal, but this is stuff you should know as a knowledgeable agent anyways, because you just have to assume that the agent on the other side isn't. And that's just the way it's going to be. That's another reason why I say iron sharpens iron, and I want to get everybody's game elevated, and then we're not having these unnecessary conversations. All right. We talked about it earlier. You're looking at the property appraiser's record. If it's multifamily, look at the property use code on the property appraisers page. Just the other day, went to a closing, lender pulled out, told you the example. It just sticks in my mind as something that was so, in the conversation, the 1,000 conversations involving us and the conversations between the agents was completely avoidable. While you're there, look at the structure. Is it wood frame? Wood will hurt the sale value. Insurance for wood has gone through the roof, no pun intended. That's a biggie. After the hurricanes, insurance is going up. Make sure that your seller is educated on the fact that the buyer's mortgage is going to be adjusted for escalating insurance, which means they have less to apply to principal. So there's principal, interest, and taxes are factored into the mortgage payment. If insurance goes through the roof, it's just math. There's less available for principal, and that can hurt the final sale price. Look up the flood hazard rating on realtor.com. I wish we had a screen where I could see a show of hands so you guys could give me some input on how frequently you've seen the flood issues come up. There was some recent state statutes, recent state constitutional amendments passed on valuing property improvements and taxes with regard to flood proofing your property, a deduction from taxes. But the flood hazard rating on realtor.com, it's vital that, Ryan, do you have any personal experience with this? It's vital that agents know the flood hazard rating.
Yeah.
So
no, it is. I mean, I've had it come up on a couple properties. Multi-million-dollar deal that I sold in, in Lantana. Turns out it was like this one part of the road that this line went over, and it was in, across the street wasn't, and the house that I was selling was. So
back in the day, did I lose my screen share? Are you looking at my screen share?
No, I just lost it.
Wonder what happened. Post disabled, screen share. Hang on one second. Alex, it says host disabled, participant screen sharing. Can you boot that back up? So back in the day, it didn't really matter if you had knowledge of this flood hazard zone because it just didn't come up as a topic of conversation. Are you looking at the screen share with the, all right. Nowadays, the only place you can find the flood hazard rating is on realtor.com. It doesn't show up in the MLS. It doesn't show up on Zillow. It doesn't show up anyplace else. But buyers are going on realtor.com. So you have to set expectations with your seller. And it used to be flood hazard ratings applied to a broad area. Right now, flood hazard ratings apply on a house by house basis. So if you have a house, it's just like a pool or a two-car garage. If you have a house that has a high flood hazard rating and it's in between houses that have low flood hazard ratings, you have to prepare your seller, you have to prepare your buyer, you have to know, and you don't want to look flat-footed when your buyer says to you, "Oh, agent, didn't you know that this is a 7 out of 10 flood hazard rating?" And you're scrambling trying to figure out what that is. We'll have another title talk. I'll show you the criteria which determine the flood hazard ratings. It's not complicated. If you know what it is, you can identify this stuff right off the bat, but you can always go to realtor.com and figure out what it is. All right, I want to keep this to an hour, no more. Now you walk the property. You've got the listing agreement signed. What do you do next? You walk the property with your seller. You're looking for a few things. You're going to have the conversation about open permits. You sign the contract, you sign the listing agreement, and now you're going to walk the property and see brand new windows in an older home, and you're going to have this conversation with your seller. Obviously these things are permitted. Just want to confirm that with you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. And they say yes or no. I have a whole other title topic that we can go, title talk and go in depth on this. In your title advance, you're going to see notices of commencement. Oh, one more thing on permits. When you're walking the property and you see open, you see brand new windows. We did a sale for a seller recently. I did the closing when they bought the house. It was an investment property in Northwood. They bought the house dirt cheap. And over the course of the last 10 years, they put in windows, they put in doors, they put in gutters, everything you can imagine. Not one permit was pulled. The property competitive properties in the market were selling for 4 times their value at the time frame this guy bought the house. His was easily 4 or 5 times the value we paid for it. Like there was no indication this thing wasn't going to sell for just south of $1 million, right? And when we got to the closing table, we couldn't even get a buyer to close on it because the open permits. Had the listing agent had the conversation with the seller early on, it wouldn't have been an issue. It would have been an issue in the seller's mind, but here's the thing to remember. The contract requires sellers disclose in writing work that was done without permits and work that they did without permits, or knowledge they have of work that was done without permits. And the problem, and we'll go through a whole nother title talk on this because there's all kinds of stuff that's in the contract that parties don't know about, and until it goes to litigation, then the buyer looks at the buyer's agent. The buyer's agent's like, I had no idea, but it's in there. And we'll go in another title talk. We'll go in depth on a bunch of different contract issues that you can use as leverage with your clients, you use as leverage with your opposing agents. You know the contract inside and out. It's a tool, right? You got to get your seller, you got to lever your seller into disclosing all this stuff in writing. That's the tool you use. You show the seller where it says, every single contract you're going to sign in Florida is going to require you to disclose the stuff in writing. This isn't unique to me. I'm not the one agent who's going to make you do this. Any agent's going to make you do this because that's what the contract requires. And if you don't do it, all sellers are going to go, well, how do they know what I know? Trust me, for $3,500, any decent real estate litigation attorney can figure out what you know and what you don't know. And that's cheap money when you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands in a diminution in value case. Don't want to scare you guys. It's just, that's the way it is. The contract says you have to put it in writing, and if you don't, then you're liable. And it's easy to prove, right? So you own the property for 10 years. There's manufacturer's codes on every single one of these products. They can tell when they were installed. It's not a heavy lift. Flood hazard rating, we went over that after you sign. Okay. So now you're having the difficult conversations in your title search report or your title advance. You're going to see something potentially called notices of commencement. So notices of commencement are, if nobody knows, notices of commencement are just something that the contractors sign, that the owners sign when contractors start work. If there are open notices of commencement in your title advance, it'll be listed just like an open mortgage. It's something that has to get closed before closing. You want to have a quick conversation with your seller. Oh, I see your title advance shows a notice of commencement. I can't tell you how many of these times these things have been a problem at closing, and we can get that stuff solved long before we get the contract, right? So here's the magic, you guys. You bust your ass finding a listing. You bust your ass getting a listing. You bust your ass going through the closing process. And then this stuff's going to derail you at the last minute because we need a 90-day extension or whatever to close the open notice of commencement. I will tell you that in the future, all this stuff gets done before the contract hits the title agent's doorstep. And why not do it now, right? It just doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, I get passionate about this stuff.
It's awesome.
All right, FIRPTA, Foreign Investment and Real Property Tax Act. You want to have that difficult conversation with your seller. No seller on the planet, bar none, is prepared to pay FIRPTA. You got the miracle seller if they are. We can go do a whole title talk on FIRPTA. I'll give you a quick example why you want to have the conversation early. 900 grand in mortgages, you know, commissions and closing costs, and the seller, and $1 million sale price, and the seller got whacked for 150 grand in FIRPTA. They are not coming out of their pocket on the day of closing with 150 grand to close that deal. And so the seller says, we're not closing. Why not know that ahead of time before you burned all those calories? Now, we can lever the seller in, we can force the seller into closing through a specific performance lawsuit with the law firm. Not a heavy lift for us, and 9 times out of 10, we'll get the thing done that way. But what buyer wants to sue the seller at the end of that tunnel to get the seller to close? Zero. I've had a half a dozen buyers in the last 5 years want to press that button, pull that lever, even though they have the right in the contract in section 15. No buyers want to do that. They want to get into property. They don't want to get into lawsuits. Have that difficult FERPTA conversation at the start. We'll do a whole title talk on FERPTA. Unpaid contractors, that's part of your notice of commencement discussion. But even if notices of commencement don't come up in your title advance, just say real quickly, hey, I just want to make sure you don't have any unpaid contractors. These windows are beautiful. That's going to come up at closing. Pace and Y green loans. I wish I had you guys live so I could see a show of hands. A lot of agents know about this stuff. Tons of agents still don't. Pace and Y green loans will show up on the tax bill, and they will show up in your title advance, and they need to be reflected in the new FARBAR form that was just released recently. There's a section for a Pace and Y green addendum. Some people call these tax liens, tax improvement liens. They are not paid on a monthly basis. And here's the big problem, and I have a real hard time with this. But when the loan officer, so what happens typically is you have an older couple, house is dilapidated, somebody knocks on the door. Hey, I see you guys need a roof. I'm here to put a roof on your house, and you don't have to make any payments on the loan. They say, well, we don't have any money. And the roofer says, well, I'll give you a loan and you don't have to make any payments on it. And the buyer will assume this loan. That is the biggest mistake that's occurring right now. And the loan officer tells the seller that. And so the seller sees the listing agent with the knowledge that the loan is assumable, but you as a sharp listing agent or a buyer's agent know it's not, and this will be a boomerang right before closing. So you have to know if there's a PACE or a Y green loan, you have to disclose it in the contract, and it might chill some buyers, but it's much better than going to the closing table and having the buyer's lender say that Y green loan has to close, and there's a $16,000 balance. And then the buyer's agent, and then the buyer and the seller look at the listing agent, the buyer's agent feel like, come on, guys, this is your turn. Know that stuff ahead of time. Make sure it's not nipping you in the butt at the end of the tunnel. Get it in the contract. Again, sellers might kick and scream because they were told it's assumable. No buyer's lender on the planet will assume it, and no buyer that has knowledge is going to assume it either. And if you don't have the knowledge, they'll know it before the closing because it's in the title commitment at the last minute. Home improvement loans, equity lines of credit, those are all second mortgages. Although those we discovered in the title search, best you know early, it's never too early to have that conversation with your seller. Look for things that don't fit. For example, older couple, rundown home with brand new high quality hurricane impact windows. It just screams PACE or Y green loan, have that difficult conversation. I had an agent notice multiple pictures of the seller with the same person and kids, so it's single. Oh yeah, look for stuff that doesn't fit. And so the agent was walking around the house, and there were pictures all over the house with the seller. They insisted they were single. There were pictures of the seller with, you know, another woman and a little kid, and all that stuff is warning flags. Have those difficult conversations. If you sense a problem, ask the hard questions. Does the seller have outstanding judgment liens, things like that, divorces, unpaid child support? This will all show up in your title advance. So you don't even have to have the conversation. This list was actually generated before I started doing title advance for agents. And I've actually issued a few title advances in the last week, and they resulted in 3 contracts. So they were: distinguish yourself as a sophisticated agent, get the HOA contract info. Get that HOA contact information up front. Sometimes there are nested HOAs. You have parent, a sub, and a sub. Get that information up front. It'll also appear in the title advance. That's germane to the success of the sale. Ask them if it's their primary residence. If it's their primary residence and they're married, the spouse has to sign. If it's not their primary residence, then the spouse doesn't have to sign. Ask the seller if they're buying another home. Research portability. That can distinguish you. So if the seller is going to be buying another home and you walk in there and you talk about portability, You know all those things ahead of time. You talk about the permits. That seller, when they're going through that Rolodex of agents they interviewed that day, you are gonna stick out. This is the stuff that other sellers agents aren't coming to the table with. Have the portability rules in your head. We'll do another title talk on all this stuff, so you know this stuff. There's even a thing called partition of portability. So you really want to make yourself shine in the seller's eyes. You have people that are divorcing, they sell the house, they can actually negotiate between the two sellers the assignment of portability. So you know, one of the sellers, the husband's going to go live in a little rental place and the wife is going to go live in another house. She could take all the portability and you can do an assignment of portability to the one spouse. And that's just like giving her more money in the sale. But you as the seller's agent that know those rules, your seller is just going to go like, oh my God, I got to sign up with Ryan. They're so knowledgeable. Why would I sign up with somebody else? This is a no-brainer. Does seller need a contingency for the purchase of the new home? That's all stuff. That's just garden variety stuff. You got to put it in there. Contract drafting tip. Last time I'll say on this topic, and then I want to go over title lead real quick, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers real quick. Contract drafting tip. In tight closing contracts, make sure the loan approval period does not extend past the closing date or lands too close to the closing date. This always creates confusion. We're seeing this a lot lately. I'm going to try to sneak in stuff at the bottom of the outlines. Again, they're available on New Path Title under Realtor Resources. The stuff that I see come up over and over on these topics, I'll put in the outline so you guys can avoid that stuff. It seems easy, right? You're representing the seller, you're not doing the contract drafting. So you're not paying close attention to this stuff. You're representing the seller. But when that buyer's contract comes over, before you even send it to your seller, you look at these dates and you see if there's overlaps, because this always creates a hard time, always creates confusion. Buyers canceling 2 days before closing because the selling agent didn't see that the dates fall on each other. And I'm talking about sophisticated selling agents not looking at this stuff. Not agents that are doing 1 or 2 deals a year, agents that are doing 2 or 3 deals a month. So you got to look at this stuff closely if you want to nip that potential problem in the bud, and that's going to be a problem at the closing. Real quick, I'm going to open it up to a show of hands. If you guys have title lead, you're doing business with New Path Title. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, I love Title Leap. It's actually saved me on some recent transactions now that I've used it, and it's nice because it keeps track of all your dates. You know, it has it there in one place, so you see when your finance contingency's up, when your inspection period is up, all those good dates that are so important, and it's right there on your dashboard in real time. Obviously, is a huge value add. So,
Alex, can you re-enable? I'm not sure why I keep losing screen share. Can you boot up
I disabled the screen share so I can invite attendees to speak, and so they can become panelists if they have any questions.
All right.
And I'll give you control so you can share the screen.
Yeah, give me 2 seconds and then I'll get out of Title Leap real quick. Let's see, Title Leap. So on your home screen, you have the Title Leap shortcut icon. Ryan, can you see the Title Leap screen?
Yep. Yeah.
All right. So with one click, you click into your file. You're going to quickly see all the transactions you have go into closing. There's your title team. There's the status bar. I've got a few deals pending. This is my personal account. You can click down from this screen. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. So you're looking at your title team. If you want to message any member of your title team, it's one click, right? So with 2 clicks from your home screen to your phone, you're getting a message to your title team. You don't have to do anything else. And then that title team member, you message them and then they message you back. Hey, Jim, yeah, we got the HOAs. You can see the details of your file. You can also message here. You get your status bar. You click anywhere on the screen. It's going to take you into that file. That file is going to give you a shot of the parties and their contact information, the critical dates. Most transactions have a lot more critical dates than this one. Let me get you a transaction with a whole host of critical dates. Dennis Howell Road. Linda Lane. No, that's a refi. Saginaw. So here you have what a typical purchase and sale looks like. Here's all the critical dates. We put the critical dates in Title Leap. You guys don't have to. Every one of these critical dates is push notified to buyers and sellers via text and email. You've got all kinds of cool things like the first deposit, right? Second deposit, inspection periods. I can't tell you how many calls I get from agents and they text me and they go, oh my God, Title Leap saved me again. I forgot all about it. So you're on the seller's side, you're not watching your inspection periods or whatever. That will notify buyers and sellers via text and email. And it saves you guys because it's all logged in a communication log, so you can see that the buyers and sellers got their notice, so that even if they tell you, oh, Mr. Buyer's agent, you forgot to tell me, you say, no, Title Leap did. Also, buyers agents and sellers agents never burn calories with each other arguing over critical dates when they're using Title Leap and we serve it for them. So I had tons of agents that used to do their own critical date checklists. Now we do this for you guys, and nobody burns those calories anymore. Closing dates, title commitment dates, loan approval dates, it's all in there. I'll scroll down a little bit more. You've got the title staff. Again, you can text anybody, message anybody in the portal, secure messaging. You can also deliver documents. Now you've got all the checklist items it takes to get the file to closing, and you can take any one of these things. And here's all the stuff the buyers call us on, sellers call us on, and agents. Did you get the money? Do you have the closing documents? Do you have the title? Do you have the loan documents? All those things. But you as an agent can go back and you can look at anything you want throughout the transaction, and you can see the title insurance commitment. You can see the, whatever it is you need to review during the transaction, it's all at your fingertips. The survey, you're walking the property and the buyer says to you on the phone, hey, is that doghouse in my property or the neighbor's property? You can click on it in 2 seconds. Who carries a survey with them? You can click on it in Title Leap and you've got access to the survey, and then you're all set. You've got a shortcut bar on the left. This shortcut bar gets you to all the documents in the transaction. You've got a shortcut bar that gets you to all the communications. You got a shortcut bar that gets you to all the communication logs. So this is the log of every single text, SMS, email that went out in your file, including those contract reminders, the critical dates. And then you can get back to your transaction page real quickly. You can go through your closed files, so you can view your closed files as easily as you can view your closed files. And then you can go back here and see those failed transactions. You can see the closed transactions. You can get whatever you need to get, your settlement statements, your insurance contacts, whatever it was. Your buyer calls you and 3 years later and they say, hey, can you get me a copy of that settlement statement? And you want to look like a hero to them, you can go into Title Leap and you can email it to them. You can go to the top of the page. Under Realtor Resources, you can get live transactional support. Click on that. You'll text me 24/7. There's a little video here. And then later on today, there will be a title advance button here. It disappeared, but there's a closing cost. Oh no, we don't have the closing cost calculator on there. So you go to here to get your closing cost calculator. You go to New Path Title. You can click on the calculator sign to get these are all Title Leap features. You click on here to get your buyer and seller net sheets. You can email them out, a couple pieces of information. Nobody's capturing your data. And then on newpathtitle.com, you can also click on the dollar bill sign. So real estate fraud is $50 million a month transactional losses just in title company realtor cyber fraud. So every month there's $50 million in the United States of deals that aren't closing because of cyber fraud. So what we did was we got to get ahead of that ball. We invented Money Move. So when a buyer and a seller have a contract, the buyer's agent wants to know where to send the deposit. Don't call us, don't do anything. Seller's agents just tell the buyer's agent, tell the buyer, right? Take realtors out of the loop because they're going to be in the lawsuit if there's a cyber fraud and they're in the loop. They're delivering title instruction, wiring instructions. Simply tell the buyer's agent to tell the buyer, go to New Path Title, click on the dollar bill sign. You're going to answer some quick questions. They're going to get wiring instructions. Very shortly, we're going to have a tool in there that'll allow them to actually do the deposit in there. But the bottom line is it's a secure way to get wiring instructions, and very frequently, we get deposits ahead of the contract. Now we know when Mrs. Smith sent us 50 grand on 123 Church Street, we can call Ryan and say, hey, Ryan, we got Mrs. Smith's money. We can't wait to get the contract. And Ryan goes, that's right, I got to get you the contract or whatever. So it helps everybody. It helps us stay ahead of the ball. It helps everybody in the transaction. So here, you can also go to New Path Title and you can get the title lead closing software, attorney support, but you can also get 3D home tours, super cheap. You partner with Immersive Spaces, Matterport tours. You can get them for under $100 for a condo and under $150 for a house. If you guys don't know anything about Matterport tours, these are game-changing tech. A lot of people still don't know about them. They think it's a video. Just click on here. You can take a tour through the Matterport, see what it looks like. If you're not using them, you should be using them. It's another value add. Sellers love them. It makes the house look better in the Matterport than it actually looks. And you're going to save a ton of money and time because you're not going to be dealing with buyers that aren't going to end up closing on the house or not going to end up going under contract because you just walk through the house and they're going to say, oh, we were looking for something with more closet space, or we were looking, now you're not going to burn calories on those buyers. I think that's all I've got. I want to open up the floor now to, I would like to open up the floor now to question and answer. Alex, if you can bring everybody live. And here's why question and answer is so important, you guys. You're going to give me more information. I'm going to make more content and I'm going to deliver it back to you guys and we'll all elevate the profession. So if anybody has questions, there is absolutely no such thing as a bad question. And we're all safe here, right? This is a safe zone. And my greatest joy in my professional career is actually taking realtor questions and turning them into realtor answers that we can share with everybody. So I see everybody's not muted. Go ahead and lay them on me and I'm happy to answer what I can. And if I can't, I'll figure out who's on the call. We'll make an outline and we'll share it with everybody afterwards.
Mm-hmm. I got a quick question. When would you recommend, sharing the title advance with the sellers? I mean, at what point of the conversation, would it be the first meeting that, that you're meeting with the seller? Would it be, I guess, maybe when you're walking the property, with them, what would you recommend?
Exactly. Get the listing agreement signed, have the conversations, the high level conversations about marketing plan, all those 3 M's, and then you get the listing agreement signed, and then you have the conversation about title advance. Now, if you think that title, that's what I would do. That's going to get you to closing quicker. But if you think that it's going to be better having the title advance conversation before they sign, in other words, the seller's showing reluctance, you're trying to get that extra value add in there, and you see that they're hesitating. Now you need to distinguish yourself. Absolutely. Grab the title advance and start having the conversation on the title advance now.
That's great, Jim. Thanks.
All right, you guys. If that's my only question, I want you guys to do some homework and come back and get me some questions. Text me 24/7 on that number on New Path Title and I'll get you the answers. All right.
And what's the quickest way to order the title advance? What would be the quickest way? You said through text?
Text me at that number in the outline. Just go to New Path Title, see 24/7 attorney support. Text me the address and the word title advance and I'll get it back to you quickly. So if you're going on a listing appointment, get it to me. We can get it out in a couple of hours, sometimes quicker, but if you got a day, that'd be great, but we'll get it to you. Just let me know the urgency and we'll get it to you quicker than later.
Great.
And if you're not signed up, get signed up on RealTrade. Some of these people I see on the call today aren't RealTrade agents. I'm going to tell you from the heart, as soon as I had somebody tell me about RealTrade for years, they knew I was in technology. I didn't take the time to check it out. Then I heard that somebody was telling me about some of the features of it. I just knew it was a platform. I thought that was a pay for realtor pay to hire platform. I spent 2 minutes. I checked it out myself. This is the real deal. You don't have to pay fees, and it's the quickest way to a double dip. You cultivate your own brand. You're not paying Zillow, who's just building your hangman's noose. And in my opinion, and I don't think I'm far off, this is the future of real estate, right? So you're gonna have the bulk of the transactions are gonna be done in the you're always gonna have these boutique people and the physical people or the whatever, but the bulk of the transactions are gonna be done in neutral platforms that don't fleece the realtor and do provide value to buyers and sellers. And realtors should be making the commissions they want to make. They shouldn't be paying platforms like Zillow. I hope there are no Zillow agents on here, but they shouldn't be putting platforms like Zillow. They should be putting that money in their own pocket and using it to build their brand on platforms like RealTrade, and RealTrade should be making their revenue from the vendors, people like me. And as long as we're near realtors, we're happy to pay that fee. So RealTrade is, in my opinion, the real deal.
Awesome. Thanks for those kind words, Jim. No, thanks for the value add here to the RealTrade community. This has been shared too on YouTube Live on RealTrade. People are watching it there as well. So, you know, like I said, I mean, this is the future of, you know, sharing information, making these us agents more prepared. Jim, really appreciate all the great info and looking forward to you know, to future one of these.
Yeah, man, I'm excited, Ryan. This is good. We're going to build a little army of agents that are going to be. We're going to go in a future title talk. We're going to go over how to write persuasive copy and how to structure addendums and things like that. When you serve something like this on the other agent in the heat of the moment, they just crumble, and it works. I've been doing it. It's what they taught us in law school. It's why attorneys have an unfair advantage, and I'm going to impart it all on you guys, and you'll have the same advantage. It's not tough. It's not lawyer level stuff. It's just basic mechanics.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim.
You bet. Be good.
Thanks,
Text me.
Jim.
Absolutely, you
Bye-bye.
guys.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Ryan. It's been great. A lot of good info. Appreciate you guys.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.